My dad texted me at 2 a.m. Grab your sister and run. Don't trust your mom. So that's what I did. The phone screen burned my eyes in the dark. 3 sentences that made no sense until they made all the sense in the world. My dad had been on a business trip for 4 days, the kind of trip he took monthly, always professional and predictable. He never texted after 10 p.m., never used urgent language, never said anything that would alarm us. This message violated everything I knew about my father: cautious, measured, which meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. I was 17, responsible enough to know when adults were overreacting and when they were genuinely terrified. This message read like terror compressed into a handful of words. I threw the covers aside and grabbed clothes off the floor, pulling on jeans and a hoodie while my brain tried to process what "don't trust your mom" could possibly mean. My mother was downstairs in the living room, where I'd left her an hour earlier, watching some true crime documentary and drinking wine like she did most nights. Normal suburban mom behavior, nothing threatening or suspicious. Except my dad wouldn't send this message without a reason. And the specificity of "grab your sister and run" suggested immediate danger, not paranoid delusion. I laced up my sneakers and grabbed my backpack, dumping out textbooks and replacing them with my laptop, phone charger, and the emergency cash I kept in my desk drawer. $250 that suddenly felt like the most important thing I owned. My sister, Josie, 12 years old, was sound asleep, completely undisturbed by my frantic movement in the room next door. I crept down the hallway and eased her door open, wincing when the hinges creaked. She was buried under blankets, only her dark hair visible, breathing in the steady rhythm of deep sleep. Waking her quietly would be nearly impossible, but waking her loudly would alert our mom downstairs. And Dad's message had been explicit about not trusting her. I knelt beside Josie's bed and pressed my hand over her mouth before shaking her shoulder. Her eyes flew open in panic, and I felt her try to scream against my palm. I put a finger to my lips and whispered directly into her ear, barely audible even in the quiet of the room. Dad sent an emergency text. "We need to leave right now without Mom knowing. I'll explain everything once we're safe, but you have to trust me and stay completely quiet." Josie's eyes were huge with fear and confusion, but she nodded against my hand. I let go of her mouth and she sat up, grabbing her glasses from the nightstand. I'd already pulled clothes from her closet, jeans and a sweatshirt I pressed into her hands while gesturing urgently for her to change. She pulled them on over her pajamas, hands shaking, and I shoved the nearest sneakers onto her feet without bothering to tie the laces properly. Out the window, Josie's bedroom window faced the backyard and had a screen I'd removed dozens of times to sneak out and meet friends. I popped it loose easily and looked down at the nearly 8-foot drop to the garden below. Not ideal, but manageable, especially with the flower bed providing a softer landing than concrete. I tossed our 2 backpacks down first, watching them land in the dirt, then helped Josie climb through the window frame. She hesitated at the edge, staring at the drop with visible fear. I gripped her wrists and lowered her as far as I could reach before letting go. She dropped the remaining distance with a muffled thud that sounded explosively loud in the quiet night. I followed immediately, falling and rolling to absorb the impact. My ankle twisted slightly on landing, but held my weight when I stood up. Josie stared at me with questions written all over her face, but I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back fence. We had maybe minutes before Mom checked on us or heard something suspicious. The fence was about 6 feet of wood, which I scaled by stepping on the crossbeam, pulling myself over, and dropping into the neighbor's yard. Josie struggled more with the height, but I guided her, catching her as she came down beside me. We ran through 3 backyards before emerging onto a street 2 blocks from our house. We were both breathing hard, and only then did I grab my phone and reread Dad's message, searching for details I might have missed in my panic. The timestamp showed 2:03 a.m., sent 7 minutes earlier. No follow-up message, no missed calls, just those 3 sentences hanging in digital space like a grenade. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. His professional greeting felt incongruent with the emergency he'd declared. Josie tugged my sleeve, demanding explanations I didn't have, her voice climbing toward panic. I showed her the message and watched her face go pale, even under the weak streetlight. What does he mean? Don't trust Mom? What's happening? I don't know yet, but Dad wouldn't say that unless it was serious. We need to get somewhere safe and figure out what's going on. I was trying to sound calm and in control, despite having no plan beyond fleeing our house. We stood on a residential street at 2 a.m., nowhere to go, no way to reach the only parent who'd warned us to run. My phone buzzed with a new message, this time from my mom. "Where are you, girls? I heard noise upstairs." The casual tone felt wrong given the circumstances, like she was pretending nothing unusual was happening, or maybe nothing unusual was happening from her perspective. Maybe Dad's message was the aberration, and Mom was genuinely confused about missing daughters. But I kept coming back to those words, the specificity of the warning, the fact that Dad's phone was now off. Another message from Mom appeared before I could decide how to respond. "This isn't funny. Come down right now or I'm calling the police." The threat landed strangely because what would she tell the police? That her teenage daughters had left the house at night? We weren't missing or kidnapped. We'd left voluntarily based on our father's warning, unless Mom had reasons to want police involvement, unless she was trying to force us back under some kind of official authority. Josie was crying quietly, the kind of scared tears that come from being 12 and watching your normal life explode at 2 a.m. I put my arm around her shoulders and kept walking, moving toward the 24-hour convenience store 3 blocks away. At least there we'd have lights and potential witnesses, some minimal safety while I figured out next steps. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Mom, each one escalating in tone, from confused to irritated to threatening. The convenience store. The convenience store was nearly empty, except for a bored clerk scrolling his phone behind bulletproof glass. Josie and I huddled in the back corner near the sodas, trying to look casual despite being 2 teenagers alone at 2 a.m. I called Dad again with the same result, straight to voicemail. His phone was definitely off. I tried texting instead, asking for more information, explaining we'd left but needed to know what was happening. My phone rang and my mom's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering, putting it on speaker so Josie could hear. My mom's voice came through tense, emotion barely controlled. "Where are you? What is going on? I wake up and both my daughters are gone. Windows open. You're not answering texts. You're scaring me, sweetheart." She sounded genuinely frightened and confused. Nothing in her tone suggested danger or threat. But Dad's message kept echoing in my mind, the urgency and specificity that made us run. "Dad texted us," I said carefully, watching Josie's face for reactions. "He said to leave the house and not trust you. We need to know why he'd say that." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then my mom laughed, a dry sound that raised every hair on the back of my neck. "Your father texted you at 2 a.m. telling you to run from me? That's insane. He's at a conference, probably drunk at some hotel bar. He doesn't know what he's saying." But I'd never seen my dad drunk in my life. He barely drank, even at parties. And the message hadn't sounded like someone drunk. It sounded like someone terrified. Why would he specifically say not to trust you? What is he afraid you'll do? My mom's breathing quickened on the line, and when she spoke again, her voice had shifted into something harder. "Listen to me very carefully. Your father is having some kind of mental breakdown. He's been acting paranoid for weeks, saying strange things, accusing me of things that aren't true. I didn't want to worry you girls, but he's been seeing a therapist about delusions. What he said is part of that. You need to come home right now so we can sort this out as a family." The explanation sounded reasonable, except for the timing. If Dad had been delusional for weeks, why send the emergency text tonight? Why turn off his phone after sending it? If he was just drunk and confused? And why did Mom's voice sound wrong, like she was performing concern instead of feeling it? I looked at Josie and saw my own doubt reflected in her expression. "I want to talk to Dad first," I said. "I want to hear from him that he's okay and that the text was a mistake. Then we'll come home." My mom made a frustrated sound and I heard movement on her end. Footsteps and the jangle of car keys. "Fine. Stay where you are and I'll come get you. We'll call your dad together from the car and sort this out. Where exactly are you?" Every instinct I had screamed not to tell her, not to reveal our location, until I understood what was happening. "We're at a friend's house. We'll come home once we talk to Dad." I hung up before she could respond and immediately powered off my phone. Suddenly, I was paranoid about location tracking. Josie did the same without me asking, both of us operating on the same frequency of distrust. The convenience store clerk was watching us now with open suspicion, probably wondering whether to call the police about two teenagers acting strange in his store at 2 a.m. I grabbed 2 bottles of water and paid with cash, trying to seem normal and unhurried. We needed to move, but I had no idea where to go. Dad's message had said run, but hadn't specified a destination. It hadn't given us a hideout or contact information beyond that initial warning. The SUV Josie grabbed my arm as we left the store, pointing back the way we'd come. A car was driving slowly down the street, headlights off, moving like it was searching for something. Even 2 blocks away, I recognized my mom's silver SUV, the one she used for work and for driving us to practices. She was hunting for us. Somehow, she'd guessed, or tracked, that we'd be in this area. We ducked behind a parked truck and watched the SUV pass. My mom's profile was visible through the driver's window, her face lit by her phone screen, and the expression I saw there wasn't a worried mother's. It was cold calculation. She turned the corner and we ran the opposite direction, staying low behind parked cars until we reached the next major intersection. A bus stop provided temporary cover, and I tried to think through our options logically. Dad was unreachable. Mom was actively hunting us. We had nowhere to go except friends' houses, whose parents would immediately call our mother. We needed an adult who would hear the full situation before making judgment, someone with authority but no existing loyalty to Mom. My phone turned on and immediately started buzzing with messages. Most from Mom, tone increasingly frantic, but one from an unknown number. "This is Special Agent Naomi Cross with the FBI. Your father asked me to contact you if anything happened to him. Call this number immediately from a secure line. Do not go home. Do not trust local police." The message was so unexpected, so far outside normal possibility, that I read it 3 times before my brain accepted the words. FBI involvement suggested crimes far beyond family drama. It suggested Dad's warning was about something bigger than a breakdown or a marriage falling apart. Josie read over my shoulder, and her face went even paler. Why would Dad be talking to the FBI? What did Mom do? She was asking the questions I was thinking but couldn't voice. I called the number from the message using the convenience store's payphone, now paranoid about phone tracking. A woman answered on the second ring, voice professional and alert despite the hour. "This is Agent Cross. Who am I speaking with?" "It's Maddie Ashworth. You texted me about my dad, Daniel Ashworth. He texted us tonight to leave the house and not trust our mom. We need to know what's happening." Agent Cross was quiet for a moment, and I heard the sound of keyboard clicks in the background, like she was pulling up files or verifying information. "Your father has been cooperating with a federal investigation into financial crimes for the past 3 months. He discovered evidence that your mother is at the center of a sophisticated investment fraud scheme, moving money through her advisory practice. We were building a case, but tonight our surveillance team lost contact with your dad. His last communication was sending that text to you before his phone went dark. Your parents are under federal investigation." The words landed like physical blows, and I gripped the payphone cord to steady myself. My mom wasn't just having marriage problems or acting strange. She was a criminal under federal investigation. My dad had been secretly working with the FBI, gathering evidence against his own wife, and something had gone wrong tonight that triggered his emergency warning. "Where is he now? Is he safe?" Agent Cross hesitated before answering. "We don't know. He was supposed to check in with us 3 hours ago from his hotel and didn't. His phone's location was last tracked at the hotel, then went offline. We have agents checking the hotel now, but his failure to communicate, combined with that message to you, suggests he felt immediate danger." Josie was gripping my sleeve so hard her fingers hurt, listening to my half of the conversation with growing horror. What kind of danger? Why would Mom hurt him? But even as I asked, I was remembering things that had seemed normal at the time, but now took on sinister meaning in this new context. My mom's frequent unexplained absences, Her defensive reaction when Dad asked about her business accounts, the way she'd started password protecting everything on her phone and computer. The people your mother is working with aren't the kind who leave witnesses if they think their operation is compromised. If they found out your father was cooperating with our investigation, he'd become an asset to be eliminated. And if they reached him, you and your sister are potential witnesses who know his routine and could identify associates. That's why his message told you to run. The full weight of the danger crashed over me, and I understood suddenly why my dad had been so specific, so urgent in his middle-of-the-night text. We weren't running from normal family dysfunction. We were running from people who murdered witnesses in financial crime cases. What do we do? Where do we go? Agent Cross gave me an address for an FBI field office 30 minutes north. Get there as fast as you can without using credit cards or your phones except for emergency calls. If you see your mother or anyone suspicious, call emergency services immediately. I'm dispatching agents to pick you up, but they're 45 minutes out. You need to stay hidden and moving until they arrive. I hung up and repeated everything to Josie, watching her face move through disbelief, fear, and finally grim acceptance. At 12 years old, she was processing that our mother was a criminal, our father was missing and potentially dead, and we were running from people who killed witnesses. It was too much for anyone, but especially for a kid who'd gone to bed thinking about homework and friend drama. The Chase A taxi company operated out of the strip mall across the street, and we walked quickly toward it, constantly checking whether Mom's silver SUV was nearby. The dispatcher sounded half asleep but agreed to send a car to our location, asking for a destination. I gave him an address 2 blocks from the FBI office, paranoid about giving exact locations even to seemingly innocent taxi companies. The cab arrived 15 minutes later. A beat-up old sedan driven by a man who seemed annoyed at being woken up for a fare. Josie and I climbed into the back seat, and I handed him cash up front, asking him to drive carefully and avoid main roads. He gave me a strange look but pocketed the money and pulled out of the lot. We'd gone maybe 3 miles when headlights appeared behind us, closing fast. The taxi driver noticed and cursed, accelerating slightly. Someone's been following us since we left, probably drunk idiots messing around. But I turned to look and recognized Mom's SUV, close enough now that I could see her face through the windshield, grim and determined. "That's our mom," I told the driver. "She's dangerous. We need to lose her right now." He looked at me like I was insane, right up until Mom's SUV hit us from behind, hard enough to throw Josie and me forward against the front seats. The driver cursed louder and floored it. The old cab responded sluggishly as Mom hit us again. We were on a semi-rural road with minimal traffic, exactly the wrong place for a chase scene. Mom pulled alongside us, and I could see her clearly now, her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. She was trying to force us off the road. Her SUV was heavier and more powerful than the taxi. The driver was panicking, swerving violently, trying to maintain control while Mom repeatedly clipped the side of the cab. Josie was screaming, and I was on my phone calling emergency services, shouting our location and situation to a dispatcher who kept asking me to slow down and repeat myself. Mom delivered one more hard hit, and the taxi spun out, rotating twice before leaving the road into a shallow ditch. The impact threw us around the interior despite our seatbelts, my head hitting the window hard enough to see stars. Mom's SUV stopped with a screech, and I watched her get out and walk toward our wrecked taxi with determination. The driver was slumped over the wheel, dazed or unconscious, and Josie was crying beside me. I grabbed her hand and kicked open the opposite door, dragging her out and into the drainage ditch that ran alongside the road. We ran through brush and darkness while Mom shouted behind us, her voice carrying through the quiet night. "Girls, stop. I'm trying to protect you. The FBI is lying. Your father is lying. I just need to talk to you." But her actions didn't match her words. They didn't match someone trying to protect instead of trap. The drainage ditch connected to a culvert that ran under the road, and we crawled through it, emerging on the other side muddy and scraped. Behind us, I could hear sirens approaching, the emergency call finally producing a response. My mom must have heard them too because her shouting stopped, and I heard her SUV engine start, tires screeching as she fled the scene. Police cars arrived with lights flashing, officers jumping out to check the wrecked taxi and search the area. We climbed out of the culvert with our hands raised, shouting that we'd called emergency services and were the victims. An officer approached cautiously, hand on his weapon, while his partner checked on the taxi driver, who was slowly coming to. I explained everything in a rush while Josie cried on my shoulder. The officer looked skeptical until I mentioned Special Agent Naomi Cross of the FBI by name and showed him Dad's message. His expression changed, and he called something coded into his radio before telling us to wait in the patrol car while he verified our story. The field office. 20 minutes later, black SUVs arrived with federal agents who showed badges and took us into custody from the local police. Agent Cross was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. She wrapped emergency blankets around both of us and guided us to one of the vehicles. "Your father is alive," she said immediately, and I felt something in my chest release. "He was attacked in his hotel room tonight, but he fought off his attackers and escaped. He's in protective custody and asking for you. Your mother's associates failed to kill him, so they shifted the target to you two, probably hoping to use you as leverage to stop your father from testifying." Josie was crying harder now, relief mixed with exhaustion and trauma. "Where's Mom? Did you find her?" Agent Cross shook her head grimly. "She fled the scene before local police could stop her. We have arrest warrants now for attempted murder, assault, fraud, and about a dozen other charges. Every law enforcement agency in the state is looking for her, but she's proven very good at disappearing when she wants to." The trip to the FBI field office passed in a blur of exhaustion and shock. They processed us through security and took our statements separately, recording everything about the night and our mother's behavior. Someone brought food, coffee, and blankets, treating us like fragile things that might break with rough handling. My dad arrived around sunrise, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. His face was bruised, his left arm in a sling, and he moved like his ribs hurt. But when he saw us in the conference room, he broke down completely, pulling us both into a careful hug that made Josie sob into his chest. "I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I thought I could handle it quietly. I thought I could protect you." The whole story. The full story came out over the following hours. My mom had been running an investment advisory fraud scheme for 5 years, using her license to facilitate money laundering for a criminal organization. My dad discovered evidence of it by accident. He found communications that made clear she wasn't just involved, but central to the operation. He went to the FBI instead of confronting her directly. He spent 3 months secretly gathering evidence while pretending everything was normal. Tonight, my mom's associates had discovered his cooperation through a leak in the investigation. They sent people to his hotel to eliminate the witness problem, but my dad had been paranoid enough to have extra locks and a plan for exactly this scenario. He fought them off and escaped, but not before sending us that warning, knowing that if they'd come for him, they'd come for us next. "She never planned to hurt you directly," my dad explained, his voice breaking. "She wanted to grab you before the FBI could use you as leverage to force me not to testify. But when you ran, when you didn't come home, she panicked. The woman who chased you tonight wasn't your mother protecting her children. She was a criminal protecting her operation by any means necessary." Aftermath. The trial happened 8 months later. My mom was arrested at the border trying to flee with fake documents and a substantial amount of cash. The evidence my dad and the FBI had gathered was overwhelming, documenting years of fraud and money laundering involving millions of dollars. 14 people were charged in the conspiracy, but my mom received the longest sentence, 22 years for fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder, and a list of other charges that took the prosecutor 10 minutes to read. She never looked at us during the trial, never showed remorse or tried to explain. The woman in the defendant's chair was a stranger wearing my mother's face, and I finally understood that we'd lived with a criminal our whole lives, just without knowing it. My dad testified for 2 days, his voice steady despite visible emotional pain, explaining how he'd fallen in love with someone who didn't exist, who'd been playing a role the entire time. Josie and I live with our dad now, in a different state, under partial witness protection. It's not a full relocation and name change, but enough security that we sleep without nightmares about SUVs slamming into our car. We're both in therapy, processing the betrayal and trauma, learning to trust again after having the fundamental safety of family shattered. My dad is rebuilding his engineering consulting practice and trying to forgive himself for not seeing the warning signs sooner, for exposing us to danger he never knew existed.